I'm 80. Yeah, so I'll be 37 in 20 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, yeah, because
So
you share a birthday with my little one.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I think you told me that. Because somebody came out and decided to tell everyone when my birthday was. And then I think when I met you, I think that was discussed.
Yeah, I seem to remember we did a birthday video for you at some point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's coming up around the bend, and now we're on the upswing of 40. So, cheers to all that.
you're years away from 40 yet.
You've gone from nearly 30s, from your early 30s to your nearly 40s.
There you go.
I'd say still. I'd say mid-30s still. It's mid-30s still.
Mid-30s. Yeah. We're halfway. When did I start? So it's been, I think I was around 30 when I started. Does that make sense? Yeah, 2017, 16, 17-ish is when I started producing videos and working with Jimmy and everything like that. Gosh, it's been a while. I was looking up old videos and old photos and things like that because I've never really dove into what Instagram keeps, which I found out is basically anything you've ever posted. I didn't know that. So I was just looking through a bunch of old stuff for funsies this morning, and some of the stuff is so old. And I have, I got towards the beginning of it and I was like, oh yeah, that's when the teepee thing happened at Jimmy's. And I met,
oh my God, yeah,
the first time, including like Laura and Jocko and Jackman.
Berkey was there as well, wasn't he? I think.
Yeah. First time I had met Berkey. Yeah. And then luckily got to see him at Maker Central and just have coffee with him every morning because we were the only two that were awake and at the hotel when everybody else was still sleeping. I love that guy.
Well, he's an early riser, isn't he? Yeah. He's up every day to see the dawn pretty much all year round, I think.
I think so. Yeah. He's just, I don't know. I wonder when he goes to sleep because I've had many a talk with people where the discussion revolves around how early you get up or when do you start working in the morning. And oh yeah, but you close it up around 5 or 6, and then you get to bed by 10 or 10:30. What's that like? I'm still doing the whole wake up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning because my brain wakes me up, but I'm still not going to bed until after midnight. Usually,
it's when you meet. It's when you're still awake and you meet yourself waking up.
That's what it is. That's what it is. I'm making coffee, but the other one's still sleeping next to me. And I got to nudge him awake. It's like, hey, man, the crossover can't happen. Yeah, there you go. I mean, when I got back in town from Maker's Camp recently, I had planned on pulling over and falling asleep somewhere. But by the time I got here, the sun was up or coming up. So I just made coffee and kept going. It's really not, I'm not going to say it's healthy, but
it's fun to do that now and again.
Now and again. That's when it becomes regular that it just gets weird.
Yeah.
Oh, Steve's here. Oh, yeah. See, I clicked over
Steve's
the
in
comments
the chat.
thing. Now. Steve. He didn't hear us talking about how he's going to make an excuse for not recording.
No, he didn't hear that.
No, that was before we went live. Yeah, don't worry. Yeah, he's got no idea.
Right. Okay, he won't hear about it. That's fine.
We won't tell him. Yeah.
Go on, tell him. So, boys, it's been quite a while since I've chatted with you two. I mean, we had my two other idiots with me.
Yeah.
Last time. And I was at Ann's. That was a silly one. But now here we are getting into. I get to luckily record right before everyone goes crazy for Halloween. And boy howdy, have I seen all the maker community people that I feel like it's now become. It's really ramping up what Halloween could or should be for a lot of people because it used to be, plastic costumes and all this stuff. And now everyone's putting a lot of time and energy into making really high quality, spending the entire month making costumes. That's been really fun.
A friend of mine's a DJ, and he often puts like his speakers and things in his front garden and dresses everything up, to be like a really sort of spooky kind of, graveyard type thing. And then when the kids are walking up towards his door, he's then through his microphone, doing all the spooky noises, or sat out the window just chuckling to himself, just watching all the fun.
I did wonder if I was going to get. I mean, I'm so off the beaten path out here, and I'm not 100% sure how trick-or-treating works, but I don't think I'm going to get anybody. I mean, my closest neighbor is almost a mile away, and I only have the one. I'll probably be all right. I don't know. Maybe I'll throw a pumpkin out in the middle of the road just to reinstate, like, no candy here. Just throw a pumpkin. Let it destroy itself. I should go buy a pumpkin. That's what I should do.
Like a trebuchet or something to just launch the pumpkin at the passing cars.
There you go. That works for me.
I think it's on brand at least.
Yeah. I'll put the forge.
Surely a cannon.
Yeah, I suppose.
Do I have anything I could use as a cannon? I do. I do have a piece of steel I could use as a cannon. That's the spirit. Fire cannons all night.
Well, I mean, Mythbusters hit a cannon out of a log. Just put some bands around the log. Board it out.
I think it only. What did it only fire once though? Once they really ramped it up.
Yeah, pretty once much. Or twice. Yeah.
It's good for one. I wonder if I'll see any strange things going on. I live close enough or earshot from the Air Force Base that's over here, and there's always all kinds of weird stuff going on after dark. I have no idea if they would do something fun for Halloween, but more often than not, you just see those weird parachute flares because they're doing trial runs or whatever
flares. We call them over here. Yeah.
What is it?
Schmooly flares.
Schmooly flares. Well, they hang in the sky for about 45 minutes, and they're bright as the sun. It's pretty cool to see those. And then just strange noises and aircrafts that don't seem like they're real kind of fly overhead periodically. So. We'll see. Maybe they'll do something
zigzagging back and forth. Like, X-Files style.
Running straight lines and then stopping halfway. Yeah, it's really scary.
You don't see any kind of like weird green lights coming up from underneath, things like that.
Not in a while. It's been a while.
You're not that close to Nevada
No.
then.
A couple hours will get me there.
Or 30 seconds in the kind of the right aircraft.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing tomorrow. I'll jump onto base, find whatever secret aircraft they have, and then fly it to Area 51, and see if they'll let me in. It's like, oh, clearly you're from the other Air Force Base. Come on in.
But I think to top that off, you'd have to just land and then just ask them about what they're doing for Halloween.
Hey boys, how we doing?
I'm not interested in secrets. I just want to know what you're doing for Halloween.
Then I'll take off. I'll head back.
Yeah.
Oh, can you imagine Area 51 and Halloween? Yeah, but they have a right laugh. Yeah.
It would either have to be super strict and nothing is allowed at all, or they would just lean into it.
No letting any visitors out just because it's Halloween.
Yeah.
Boss, it's been perfect.
Johnson here saying he's watching the news tomorrow. Yep, that'll be me. Something weird shows up. Man shows up in pirate costume at Area 51. Live streams from Instagram. What's up, guys? I found him. That'll be me.
The one time it isn't Florida, man.
What would you even call me now? I've lived in so many states. I say that. Wait, I've only lived in 4. I've lived in 4 states. That's not a lot.
It's what, 2%? 8%. I can't maths.
Go for it.
Yeah, about 8.
Numbers waved bye-bye to me a long time ago.
Yeah.
The clock's changed. It's broken me. That's my excuse. I'm sticking with it.
Yes.
And it's interesting though, with like you say, with the making. There are certain people within the maker community who kind of essentially their entire year revolves around one event, whether it's kind of Halloween. Yeah, so somebody like, I don't know, Vanek Props. Yeah, it pretty much majority of things he makes is stuff for Halloween. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's amazing. And there's a couple of other channels which I can't remember off the top of my head right now, who kind of yep, all we make is Halloween stuff. So they get pretty much all their views kind of October, and then that kind of sort of sees them over the year. But then they're kind of constantly just making stuff. It's like, yeah, I'm not just gonna make a few foam gravestones. We're gonna have the entire gate, high wrought iron made out of foam gate for the churchyard, and then all the kind of things that go in it. The different trick things that are happening. Yeah, have Arduino controlled something, so somebody's walking up, it starts making creaky noises, and hands appear out of the
full haunted house experience.
It is I know there are places in the U.S. They make a huge deal out of the haunted house season, because they may start up towards like middle of September, even, or late September. They'll put the entire month of September into all the prep work, rent out an old building, make all the stuff for it. They've been making all the stuff for it all year long or whatever. And finally they can come in and install. And then they put on the show for the entire month of October. You go in every night. They have people coming through. Y'all get your scares and you pay your monies for your tickets. And then whatever, they just cycle that for a month or so. And they used to have those in Kansas City. And it was a big deal where I grew up. It was a big deal to go down to the haunted houses with your friends, or maybe when you're 16, you go with your new lady friend or your boyfriend, and you hold hands in scary places in the haunted houses. And it's adorable, because it was an experience for 30 minutes that your parents are waiting outside in the car the entire time. And you kind of get back in and go, well, was that worth 30 minutes and $50 for the ticket? I sure hope so. But the culture that revolves around Halloween and the real scary stuff, I don't know, the gore, the blood, the getting your heart racing and all that kind of stuff. I don't know about you guys. I've never been a big fan of horror movies.
Same, yeah.
Like, I watched Jason and Freddy and Michael Myers growing up. My dad loves horror movies. He loves every B and C list horror movie you've ever heard of. He's seen it. Yeah, I think he owns all of the Saw movies, which I don't know how many there are at this point. He loves them.
At least 57, I think.
I think so. Was never really my thing. So I love, hey, don't get me wrong, I love dressing up, right? Having a little fancy dress party, fun times. It's been a while since I've done anything like that, but again, going back to what Andy's saying, the amount of people that exist, especially since the maker community started to kind of grow, I see more and more people. It's that broadening, right? Where you see Christmas starts going into the stores around like the minute Halloween's over.
Yeah.
It's like Christmas shit shows up. But now I'm starting to see it where it's like
it's already here
June.
in the UK.
Yeah. June or July, people are like, can't wait till October. Can't wait till Halloween. You're like, wow, that's early. It's fine though. I mean, make a really good costume at that point. I caught myself looking at Mandalorian costumes because that would be fun to do at some point and go full on for a Mandalorian costume. Like, no foam.
And it would be ideal to do it where you are as well, because that kind of setting is a little bit
Tatooine, it's got a little bit of that desert planet vibe, for sure.
It's interesting talking about like the maker aspect of the Halloween side, and specifically with those like haunted house experiences, because my other half and a couple of friends are like big into that sort of side of it, even though it's tiny in the UK by comparison to what you guys get out there. But we went to one a few years ago, and they do like 4 kind of different scenes that you can go into, and it's like hay bales and a guy in like overalls and running at you with a chainsaw and all that kind of thing, or like the kind of the meandering corridor into like operating theater, and all the blood and guts dripping everywhere and that kind of thing. You know, it's that kind of intense experience. So there's lots of people screaming and shouting and things like that. And then I was just looking at all the scenes and like the guy running towards us with the chainsaw, you know, sort of screeching away, and I'm like, oh, there's no chain on that. And, oh, I wonder why they put... So I've not been invited back since, weirdly enough.
If only I'd been that.
Halloween.
If I was that observant when I was a young lad, I remember that being it was called the Edge of Hell. The Edge of Hell was the scariest haunted house you could go to. And the last room always consisted of a guy in a mask wielding a chainsaw and had no chain on it. But I didn't know that. It freaked me right the hell out. The silly part about it is that you rode... They had this fake thing where it was like, oh, here's the stairway to heaven. It's your way out. But then there was a fun slide to hell. And that was where you were forced to go. Like no one could go up the staircase. You know, that was a silly joke. And then you rode a really fun slide all the way back down to the ground. So you got to end all your scariness with like a little bit of wee. Which I don't know if that was pre-thought by them. We're like, wow, we really just scared the hell out of everybody. We want to make sure that everybody has a fun time and doesn't leave here having nightmares or being terrified. Who's going to say no to a slide? A little fun slide. I want to give them credit and say that was pre-thought, but it was also probably just the easiest way to get people out of there fast.
Yeah, I was going to say it's the speed element, I think, is going to be critical there.
Mm-hmm.
Shove them down the slide and it just gets them out your way.
That's it. Did you ever watch A Christmas Carol where the creepy elf pushes Ralphie down the slide? That always scared the hell out of me. When I was little, there's always a guy that just shoves him down the slide. That's all.
So I saw Jaws quite young. First time it was on TV, and that I've seen it several times, and I think a couple of times as an adult. And I found that there's that scene, or there is a scene where a head appears, and I know it. Yeah, the first time I didn't know. But the second and third time, I knew it was coming. I knew roughly when it was coming. Still made me jump. Yeah, it's still. But I think for me, the scarier films aren't things like the horror movies. It's the kind of sort of the stuff that could be real. It's like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I am never ever watching that film again. That is a seriously scary film if you think about it and realize that actually there's an awful lot of truth behind it. Mm-hmm. That freaked me out for weeks after I watched that. But stuff like the slasher stuff is just boring, really.
Yeah, well, it started to just, as I got older and got more into movies, I realized that so much of it was just how much gore can we pump into this and maintain an R rating, you know? So more blood, more practical effects that made it look like somebody's arm was getting ripped off or whatever. It didn't really do it for me. And it's why I've kind of avoided the genre for a while since. I like cerebral films and like cerebral horror or anything that's kind of a mind F. And those, I think you're right, the ones that tend to be a little bit more realistic or just twisting reality a smidge is where it starts to screw with me, because then it's like, oh, but what if that ever does happen? That makes me not want to go into the basement anymore. It's scary down there. And I don't know if it was the same for you guys, but going into my basement when I was a kid, or my grandparents was the worst. Going into my grandparents' basement when I was a kid was one of the scariest things I could possibly do. I hated doing it. I hated being out at night when all the lights were off. I didn't like the dark. Now I love the dark. I was born in it. But I've accepted a lot of the stuff that I saw when I was young that I used to be scared of is just kind of unbelievable. And therefore I can't really get engaged in it. I feel like, who was I talking to recently that saw the new Hellraiser movie? And they were like, not so great. Didn't really like it. Whatever. It was their opinion. But I remember watching Hellraiser when I was little with my dad and being scared out of my mind. And that was, evil trapped in Pandora's box. So it's pretty unbelievable. But what they were doing in that was, or even the early Freddy stuff where it was all nightmares. It happens in your nightmare, and you can die in your nightmare. That stuff was horrifying. And then it just became what's the creepiest way we can kill somebody, or what's the most gory way we can kill somebody.
Yeah, let's
Stop
take
liking
the generic template of here's where the particular score changes so that you know something's about to jump out at you, and it's all it's just either a gore fest or oh well, something's about to jump out. Oh, there it is.
There it is. That's why movies like Get Out. If you guys have watched Get Out,
No.
it is so good, but it has a lot more to do with the terrifying nature of people, just how people are scary as hell. And it's one of Jordan Peele's movies. I just watched another one of his recently that was really good. I won't talk about that one though, because I'm going to talk about it on our podcast and try not to spoil things twice, especially with Steve listening.
He is, but he's just recommended the new Del Toro series on Netflix.
What? I thought Del Toro was doing Pinocchio. What happened? He's got another new thing out?
No idea.
How busy is this guy?
Clearly,
and I love his films for sure. But yeah, Jamie, what's a scary movie? Like genuinely scary to you?
I think that the last movie that really had a visceral effect on me would have been Event Horizon. And I think because I was young.
Very good. I think Al would agree with you on that one.
Yeah, and I was young and I watched it on my own in a dark room that was like a big kind of knock through, big for a British room that we had, but with a real fire going and things like that. So it was that kind of, towards the end where things start actually getting hot on screen as well. I was putting the fire out and things because it was getting a little bit too hot, and I was like that actually had a noticeable visceral effect to me. But I think cerebrally, Jessica Jones, the TV show, the Netflix one,
really
just as a thing that was horrifying to me was David Tennant's character. That
the
was
Purple
scary.
Man is very good. Yeah.
And I think that scares me more than just like a jump scare of someone coming at you with a knife, because they're either going to get you or not.
Right.
That's just but something that's like impossible to think your way around. I think that unnerved me more than any other kind of horror stuff.
I know that I will always have a soft spot in my heart for The Exorcist, because that terrified me when I saw it, and I've seen it a couple of times since, and that still gets me because it's just kind of breaking reality enough. And then just all the lore and stories behind it and everything that happened with that. Maybe some of those mid to late 80s, maybe it's nostalgia glasses, but Poltergeist still kind of gets to me, and I can still have my weird little, oh yeah, I used to be terrified of this thing or this thing. Recently, I also watched The Witch, which John D. Harvey called out just a second ago. It's Robert Eggers, which I wasn't really following him as a director, but he's starting to get put more into these kind of cerebral. That's the kind of movies that he directs. I can't remember if he wrote that too, or if he was a writer on it, but it was extremely mind-bending, because like half of it you can't tell if it is reality, and even if it's not reality, what's causing the people within this movie to do this. Also, one set piece, maybe two if you count the forest, and just the overtones and the aesthetic of it, the color grading, everything about it, it's fantastic. And it was early Anya Taylor-Joy when she was it had to have been one of her first things. She was a young lady in that. That was pretty mind-bending. I don't know if it was necessarily scary, but I did like it. I did like that one.
I think there's a difference there, isn't there? I mean, there are movies that kind of twist your mind and kind of make you kind of think, whoa, what's happening there? And how. And I find that from a couple of aspects. It's like, how is that actually being made?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not big into cinematography and things, but yeah, sometimes you're thinking, yeah, I can still remember watching Clash of the Titans. Yeah,
Yeah.
Harryhausen and his
Yeah.
and the skeletons. They're thinking, how is that happening? And yeah, and then finding out how it happened, yeah, because
Yeah.
there were documentaries about that, and kind of
Mm-hmm.
going, yeah, and it was just brilliant. Yeah, it was. A lot of people still look up to him. Yeah, compare it to modern cinematography, special effects. It's rubbish, but he
Mm-hmm.
was cutting edge at the time, and so
Mm-hmm.
it's that kind of twist your mind that. But then you get the kind of movies like the good story twists. It's like what's happening there? Why is that happening?
Mm-hmm.
And then you get the kind of, for me, you then get the horror stuff with the gore slide. I generally get bored with it, and I mean, I used to really like action movies when I was younger. Watched lots of action movies, in my sort of teens, early 20s. Most of
Mm-hmm.
them now, you go back and watch them again, you kind that was rubbish. I've changed. Yeah, I'm 30, 40 years older, and they're just not. I prefer to watch maybe something that's based on reality now in
Mm-hmm.
terms of an action movie.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the stuff that comes out of here, like out of Afghanistan, for example, and the conflict there, or to kind of, or even the kind of World War II or some of the other conflicts, where you kind of sort of based on true stories, and you're seeing the visceral nature of war.
Mm-hmm.
That I find some of that. It's for me. If you're scared, the horror movie stuff, it might make me jump. It might. I don't want to see just blood splattered everywhere just for the sake of blood splattered everywhere. But the scary stuff for me now is the stuff where you're kind of going, "Oh, this really happened." Yeah,
Yeah.
this is where you
The horrors
see
of man rather
the
than the
horrors of
horrors
man,
of
the
thoughts.
horrors
Yeah.
of war. Yeah, because I mean, certainly a lot of the action movies. You take something like Predator. Yeah, classic action movie, late 80s. Yeah, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah, jumping around with big knife, big gun, rocket launchers. Yeah, things blowing up, all that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's like complete and utter tosh. Yeah, it's just yes, it makes you jump. Yeah, you kind of what's the killer? Oh, look how horrible that predator is, etc. But you compare that against something like I don't know, Saving Private Ryan. Yeah, we actually see you're seeing.
Yeah.
Oh, look, there are hundreds of people marching onto that beach,
Mm-hmm.
and oh, there are only dozens of people getting off that beach.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say that those are for two very different audiences, aren't they? That
Yes,
you would watch something
yeah,
like Predator for the escapism, for the obvious lack of realism,
Mm-hmm.
whereas you'd watch something like Saving Private Ryan for that complete total realism, knowing that it is that kind of snapshot of reality almost.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm. So do you consider Alien a horror movie or an action movie? Because that
Alien
is
is a horror movie.
okay.
Yeah.
But Aliens and Beyond, I think, would be more action movies.
Fair enough. Once you put Ron Perlman in a movie, it kind of becomes an action movie. Yeah. I agree with that though. I've seen Saving Private Ryan and I've seen Predator, but just comparing those two, yeah, the mentality that goes into kind of the prepping yourself to watch this. You're like, I'm going to watch a thing that was very truthful.
Yeah.
This is based on reality. And yeah, it's Tom Hanks, so you just get into the acting prowess of all the people that were involved in it. And it's wonderfully done. Cinematography is beautiful and brilliant and horrifying all at the same time. And then that reality check of this happened. Maybe, we don't know that these exact things happen. They came up with their own scenes, but oh boy.
But
That's
it might not be the exact thing that happened, but those things are based on reality.
yeah.
I think that is far scarier. I think.
Maybe that's why I like the middle ground so much. Why I can enjoy the middle ground, where it is 75% reality with a little bit of bent reality, and then it lives somewhere in that cerebral area in between where
So we're not
so
talking the
close, I can
Expendables here then.
what is it?
We're not talking the Expendables here then.
No. The reality check of our old action stars getting older does not need to happen for me. Fine. I can keep them in their little snow globe of like these 10 years that they were good. Given Jean-Claude Van Damme is just still a monster. That guy he's going to live forever, maybe.
He's pickled, that's why. Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell you actually what's the stuff I can't watch anymore. Because it scares me now so much that I can actually feel I'm almost quaking in my boots when I watch it. It's climbing movies.
No.
Not necessarily movies, climbing films. So I used to climb, and I used to I used to have, don't have them anymore. Kind of there used to be I'm trying to think what they were called now. There was a series of films released on VHS back in the sort of 80s and into the early 90s that were kind of hour and a half of climbing, people climbing big routes in the States, in Europe, whatever. I used to enjoy watching those, and there'd be some fun bits on it. There'd be lots of kind of heavy metal and kind of glam rock type music to go with it, and used to love it. And then when you kind of I particularly now with high def TV, rather than sort of grainy VHS, and you've got people climbing stuff, free climbing Yosemite, for example, and you've got these shots and they're looking down, and you've kind of got people. It's just like I can literally feel the vertigo. Yeah, the vertigo now is just I quake. I am literally quaking watching it. I can't watch it anymore.
Free Solo is worth watching.
Yeah, I haven't seen all of it. I've seen bits of it. I haven't seen the whole thing, and I'd like to watch the whole thing. And I probably will watch the whole thing at some point, but it'll probably have to be on the TV, so I've got a bit of distance. But if I watch it on like a laptop with a computer behind me, and it's just like I'm up close, and I've got headphones on, and it's just like
go through the house. What happened? I was watching a film. Sorry.
So what I'm taking away from this is that we need to get Andy a VR headset to just get the full immersive experience, and that would be ultimate horror for Andy.
I'm not sure why they haven't had Alex Honnold do that, because I feel like there would be enough people that would want to have that experience of being able to look around from his perspective.
Oh, they would. Yeah.
Why haven't they put a 360 cam on him yet? Does it throw his weight distribution off just enough to where his fingers can't quite grip that?
I mean, he'd only have to drop a grade or two. It would still be, people would still be kind of pooping their pants just watching it. Well, I would, watching it if he just dropped a grade or two down, because he climbs at such a high grade. Yeah, and it scares me now. I haven't climbed in. Last time I went climbing, probably about 7 or 8 years ago. And that was just on an indoor. Well, it was an outdoor wall, but it was an indoor kind of style wall, just outdoors. I enjoyed that. That's fun. I didn't mind that at all. But being on a big cliff with big drops, no rope, no.
I suppose the kind of the parallel here from your experience, Andy, to mine that is seeing someone like a boomer installing some software on their PC and just clicking next. That's the kind of the parallel for me in my experience. That makes me shiver and freak out from my past experiences of uninstalling hundreds of browser extensions for people and things like that.
Now we used to go climbing outside in Arkansas because there's a really nice, it's called Horseshoe Canyon, shaped like a horseshoe. Tons of routes all over the place. Nothing too tall, but the grade differential was broad, right? So we would wake up in the mornings and do very easy stuff just to get warmed up. And then there was one called Learn to Fly. And it was because there was a 20-foot run out in between clips. And so you clipped in, and then you had a 20-foot diagonal shot that also started to go back like a roof. And you had to make the clip that was up here. And if you didn't make it, you fell. It was a very safe fall because you were falling into nothing. But, you know, if you'd never taken a 30 or 40-foot drop before, it scares the hell out of you. And I missed it. And it was one of the most terrifying climbing experiences I've ever had. And they were like, it's fine. You're not going to hit anything. You're going to fall straight down. No big deal. But it's such a far drop that you have this moment of just something hasn't, like, I'm supposed to get caught by now is going through your head. You're like, there's no way I can still be falling and have the rope still attached to the wall. Something is wrong. And you have that much time before it actually catches you to think that over. And then just
it's the speed of thought then, isn't it?
Yeah. And you're working under kind of accelerated speed of thought and on something like that as well. But yeah, when stuff like that happens, it is. I had a few scary moments when I was climbing. It'd be things like, the person you're climbing with just isn't as good as they said they were, or you're getting bits of rock falling around you, or it starts to rain, and it's already slippy rock even when it's dry because it's in the kind of in the shade. Yeah, and it starts to rain. You're just like, we're going to die.
I feel like we had a couple of moments where somebody was a little overzealous, climbed a bit too far, conditions started to be not so great, and then we did the maths on how much rope was left. Because well, if they're low enough, you just drop them through the carabiners, and they hit the ground, and then you just pull the other side through. No big deal. And if it's your gear in the wall, come back and pick it up later. But there were a couple of times where somebody climbed too far. We can't lower you the whole way. So we'd have to come up with ideas to like down climb slightly, like, put new gear in the wall or something, and then pull it through and then retie and all these things. And it gets, at that point, it's just so hectic because you're racing the clock. Well, I know I can't finish this thing. I'm too tired, but I can't be lower to the ground. But what needs to happen is about 10 minutes of down climbing work with untying and retying and making sure that I don't drop my rope, because then at that point I'm totally stuck in the middle of the wall. I only did that once where I got stuck in the middle of the wall, and we ended up having to, one of the guys had it was during an event, he had a t-shirt cannon, and they tied a rope to a t-shirt and shot it out of the cannon, and I had to catch it on the wall. And then I had rope fed to me, and then I could lead myself back down the wall. That was a little, it was a bit much.
I can imagine that's really difficult because you're getting more and more fatigued the longer you're there as well.
Yeah.
It's that reliance on someone else to just kind of come and help.
Yeah. We also didn't know if that was going to work. We're just like, in theory, we'll make it to you. Okay. We kind of had ideas at that point, but yeah, I've seen, going back to what we were kind of originally talking about with the movies, I feel like the real life horror stuff that I've seen, it will, maybe that's also added to me not really getting that scared and not really seeking out horror films anymore. I'm like, I feel like I've seen worse than that. I've experienced worse than that stuff that's more terrifying, scarier, stays with me longer.
I mean, if you've done your taxes or things like that, that's
yeah. Let's not get too deep here. Thanks for alleviating any of that too deep stuff. But you're right. Taxes. Do taxes when you're
being
self-employed. And send them to your tax person and have them tell you what you owe the government, and then you go, oh, that's a horrifying feeling.
I think, like you're going to say, though, is that just that kind of that life experiences in general, I think, then takes the edge off a lot of the horror movie stuff. And I think that kind of being curious, the way makers tend to be as well, that kind of removes another layer, because you're looking at practical effects and looking at how they've done that, and what's like, oh, there's a change in the audio, and the light, I've just noticed the lighting's gone a bit moodier and things like that, and oh, I've missed the jump scare because I was looking at the bit of cabinetry on the wall or something.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, yeah, I had to go through. You're right. Oh my gosh! And I didn't even tell you guys. I went through jury duty this week. I did
Yes.
my
Ah,
civic duty, and I
yeah.
went through jury duty. And I can't talk about the details legally. It was horrifying what this case was about, because it was reality, and
Yeah.
what was going on with the people that were in that case was horrifying, and I would not wish it upon anybody. And there was family and kids involved and stuff. It was terrifying, and I was finding myself distracted or trying to distract myself by looking at like the laminated wood benches in the court, because I was like, I just don't want to think about this. And these benches are terrible. I can't believe they don't have the funding to make these out of solid wood. But yeah, I think I just get distracted, or I find ways to kind of distance myself from that. Obviously, I
Coping
have an active
mechanisms, isn't it?
choice. Yeah, exactly. And even though I was forced to listen to this thing all week, it was really like, I have to know that things like that exist. And these are things I've seen in films or TV shows where you go, oh, that's a bit, I mean, that seems a bit like they kind of overdid it a little bit. That can't be real. No, you just sat through
Yeah.
cases where everything was real. There was evidence of things. I saw a video that terrified me and really made me upset. So yeah, I think that's why I watch sci-fi and fantasy stuff more than anything,
Yeah,
or
it's escape
animated
from
films.
reality.
Yeah. And I know we've talked about this before, even on our podcast, but Al and I have had plenty of chats, and even Red. I know Red just showed up. Red and I talked about movies. That's kind of one of the things that got us friendly with each other, as we were talking about films. And I started to realize that I wouldn't actually call it a pattern in the stuff that I watch, but I am a sponge for new media, film, movie, TV show, otherwise. Like, I want to know that there's something good out there I haven't heard of. And now that there's so much of it all the time, and I can't turn a movie on while I'm, in the middle of the forge, because I want to actually pay attention. I'm a bit overwhelmed by how many things I want to go and watch and experience, because you guys know this, but even since I first started, something will spark a bit of creative thought, or something will inspire me to try out brass for the first time because I saw something in a movie made out of brass. Or, well, Adam Savage just put up a video recently. He's in this props place, and they're looking at all these props from all these old movies, and they have the Book of the Dead from the Mummy, and it's all brass, etched brass or bronze. And he's like, I had no idea it was real, and it's super heavy. And he's like, yeah, it's actual, brass or bronze, and the pages are on this crazy hinge system. I thought it was a fake, just made out of foam or something like that. No, it turns out some of those hero props are very, very real, because it gives the actors something to react to.
Yeah, and I remember that scene where they first flip it open, and it's got that big thud. Yeah.
And I want to be able to watch all of this stuff, and the escapism doesn't really hit me with horror movies, or even the cerebral stuff that we've been talking about. John, if no one else has seen this, John could attest. There's not really anything in The Witch that I would want to rebuild or try to make. It's not that kind of movie. And I find that the horror movies that I do like, there's not a lot of props or anything in them. It's I tend to like the lighting or the cinematography of it. It's when I get into fantasy or some action movies, animated stuff. I really like animated stuff because the rules of physics don't really apply to them. So can you make something out of a video game or an animated film? Because then the challenge is to, like, how can you recreate that thing? So I think that just adds to me kind of, I know we've just been talking about horror movies and stuff like that, but it pushes me towards what I actually get inspired by, which is fantasy or things that aren't reality, and then trying to make them real, trying to bring them into the real world.
I think that's really common for like engineers who love sci-fi as well. The generation of engineers, our sort of age range, who are now trying to make things like out of Star Trek, or like tricorders and things like that that are fantasy props from sci-fi that trying to make them an actual, real, tangible, functional device rather than
like communicators.
Well, there you go.
Exactly. Yeah.
They're never going to be that small. Spock, I need you to beam me up. Yeah, I feel like The Fifth Element is still one of those movies that, as sci-fi goes, I love Bruce Willis and
such a wonderful film.
It's a good film.
Jovovich. The practical effects, the cinematography in it. Gary Oldman, also fantastic in that movie. Hell, that was when you still had Chris Tucker. Yeah, Chris Tucker was still in his heyday making movies. Yeah. The whole cast of that movie, and then if you actually, it's Luc Besson, if I'm not mistaken. Luc Besson, Mr. The Professional, or Leon, goes and makes Fifth Element, which is like, I remember seeing The Professional and loving it, and then I saw this other Luc Besson film, which was so polar opposite of what The Professional was, and it had, when he's holding the gun with all the 50 different features on it or whatever, and Gary Oldman's taking everything through it. There's a master prop of that. I think Adam Savage did something on that too. But
yeah, he's
there were some moving parts. And there you go. There's a ton in the cinematography that is computer generated back then because it was cheaper and easier for them. But they were still in that time of, let's not go too far. Car interiors, all the car interiors were still real. People still interacted with things. They had the taxi cab on a rig and were tilting it, moving it, and all that stuff so that they could both kind of get tossed around during the cab scene. That movie still
I think it was all the matte painting was done by, I think, Charles Darby, who did things like
matte
Titanic
painting.
And and just like all of the best, like massive films was just like all done by this one dude on like Photoshop 4 on this knackered old Mac.
I'm still fascinated by, they don't have to necessarily be new because now we're pressing up against CGI being good enough to be passable, or deep fakes to make, actors younger or older, or people that aren't with us anymore are now still in movies, because they've taken enough head scans of them. It's more difficult for me to watch sci-fi or action or anything that's kind of otherworldly with a ton of CGI in it nowadays, because we still have the understanding that it's not real, and something about that kind of breaks for me. Like, I watched all the Marvel films. I was a comic book kid growing up, so I still like watching them, but I had more than a handful of people go, you have to make Thor's hammer. I'm like, like everybody's making Thor's hammer. It is just a big block of steel, and it's got some designs and stuff in it, but that was never really all that intriguing to me. Whereas the key, the little like brass key that he holds to go into the pyramid in Fifth Element, where he's like, take this and whatever. That little key is very beautiful and intricate and small and dainty. That would be more fun for me to try and recreate, which I think would just be a jeweler's saw and some brass and patience. So I don't really get to hammer anything.
A lot of filing.
Yeah. But there's movies, so many movies and video games. Like, I still have it in me. I will make every piece of Zelda kit I possibly can at some point. That's just like an ongoing journey in my life, that I will make a Master Sword and a shield and some boots, and I got to make iron boots. I got to make iron boots just so I can trudge around in them, and then shoot some like fake underwater scene with them.
And then I think the once you've got that full kit, I think you're going to have to go and hide 900 Koroks around the local area.
I do really want to do that. And there was some mass production company who was making really good little Koroks. I don't know. They're actually pretty substantial. They look to be about the same size as they would in the game, relative to Link's size. They were selling them for just a bit too expensive for me to go, but if I bought 100 of them, and you're like, well, that's quite a substantial amount of money. And what the hell are you going to do with them? But it would be funny to just start making Koroks, next week, and then just see how long it takes to get to 900.
Hand forged Korok seeds.
Small golden poops everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to brass them. Do them as be a
Actually,
Just
you know what? I'm
900.
sure there's got to be a pretty easy jig that you can make for a little dollop like that. It's just forging a taper on like one end and then just curling it around, and then you brass it. Which I bet I could set up some kind of mass production thing where we've got like 2 brass wheels facing
just
each
send them
other,
through
and I
on
can
a
just like
conveyor
run
belt
them
that just
through.
spins them.
There you go, and then just spits them out the other side. I like this idea, guys. I'm gonna need to call this one early. I got poops to make.
You're kind of like a rail gun, just placing them like these hot little
That's good
turds in at one end that just send out these brass nuggets at the other.
Yeah, there you go.
But if you want to spread them everywhere, you could just have it on a bit of a table, change the angle, and just each one just fires into a different location.
And that's it. Everybody, good luck in the desert. It gets very hot out here. Now you're pulling hot poops out of the sand, which is even worse.
Yeah, you might have to wait to see how long they cool down to make it practical. Yeah.
Funny.
Otherwise, the first few people finding them could go, "Oh, look, this is great! Oh, now I've got a scene from Indiana Jones." I've got the thing.
I was about to say that. Now you've got we have the map. One of the best props. One of the best props in a movie is from that movie, and it's the hanger that he pulls out in front of her. And you think it's a weapon or a torture device, and then he goes click, 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 and it's a little hanger for his jacket, and then that's still one of the best little props. I know it's probably real. They probably made those somewhere, for people traveling to have this like breakdown hanger. Yeah, but I remember seeing that when I was a kid and going, how'd they make that? My dad it's just on chains and it just attaches together. I'm like, right. But why aren't all hangers made like that? It's a brilliant idea. Think of how much space those things take up.
Yeah.
And then you just have this long little rope with some chains in it. Still one of the best props. Don't know why I haven't made a bunch of those.
That's item 2 on the to-do list.
I got to make 900 poops. Then I've got this clothes hanger to do. Jamie, I got to start taking notes, man.
Yeah, take a note.
I mean, is there a film, show, any piece of media, video games included, is there something on either of your guys' kind of bucket list in terms of tech or, I don't know, physically making a thing from one of these pieces of media that you're like, one day, just before I completely hang it up and I can't do it anymore, I want to know that I've made this thing. Doesn't have to be substantial, just a thing that you've never made yet.
That could be a long list.
Yeah, I think
for you, Andy, I wouldn't doubt it.
I can definitely think of a few things. I mean, I spoiled my A-levels playing Elite when it first came out.
Right.
And the idea of having something like a Cobra simulator to play the modern version of Elite. Yeah, just completely enclosed, get in. Yeah, I mean, that would be a hell of a build. There's no way my wife would let me do it. But yeah, I mean, that would be fantastic. I mean, that'd be kind of big scale. I mean, not as big as building, Serenity Firefly. Yeah, that's going a bit far. If I was going to go down a cosplay at some point, always fancied the idea of building a still suit. And I'm thinking the original Dune. I still haven't seen the new one yet. I kind of don't know whether I want to wait till the next one's out because a lot of people tell me, it's like part 1, part 2. But I may at some point. But a still suit. Yeah, still suit with the cape, little nose clip. Yeah.
I mean, the new still suits are very, very, they are nice.
Yeah. The old ones are fantastic. The new ones, they've taken it to a new level.
Yeah. But the old ones were good. The old ones were good.
But that was, I grew up on that one. Yeah, that was kind of, fantastic film. Mm-hmm. And there are bits from that film, the knives, a couple of the knives.
Mhm.
Yeah, just amazing. Yeah, the guns, the box of pain. I can't remember what it's called now. But yeah, all those kind of there's some just amazing little bits.
Mhm.
You kind of go, oh yeah.
It's the only reason I would push you to watch the new one is just, yes, I know there's going to be a part 2 and you have to wait, but you mentioned for a second there that you're not necessarily paying all attention to the cinematography, but that movie, regardless of how you feel about Dune or how close it was to the book or the original, whatever, cinematography in that movie is
Yeah.
kind of mind-boggling. They did a
I mean, some of the clips
amazing
I've
job.
seen, yeah, some of the clips I've seen, definitely it's on the watch list. And then yeah, I mean, I'd love to make the blaster. I know it's been done 1,000, 10,000 times probably. Yeah,
Solos.
forgot his name. No, the blaster from Blade Runner.
Mandalorian? Oh,
No,
Blade Runner.
Oh,
Ah,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Decker's
Deckers.
blaster.
That's I was
Blaster,
putting
yeah.
Deckers. The D was on the tip of my head, but I couldn't get the rest of it out. Yeah, Deckers blaster from Blade Runner. That's just it's iconic.
It is.
There has been a particular kind of bucket list prop item that's always just been slightly out of reach for me, and it is a weapon. But one of the bad guys from Triple X with Vin Diesel.
Where's this going?
Kirill has this gun that is it's a Sig P220 Sport with like a big ridiculous barrel extension and the big scope on the top. So it's a handgun that he's kind of using like a sniper rifle,
Mhm.
and that's always stuck in my head as a really weird iconic prop that I just like. I periodically do searches to try and find if there's 3D models of it or even just 3D models of that particular gun that I could then modify to look like, and that's been kind of on my, kind of bucket list as a movie
fantastic.
prop for a while.
I think I'll have to at some point. I will do Mal's gun because it's like aged brass, and you don't have to really make it function because it takes these like new tech, charge bullet things. You only see them reload a couple of times, but it would be pretty simple. Just as a master that just looks nice and goes in a holster. That's it. At some point, I will do something like that. Turns out the guy that I go and forge with sometimes out here, he just got a lathe. So that was the hardest part. I was like, do I just buy hex stock because it's got a hex barrel? And I'm like, but I have to drill that out. And I tried looking at a million different places if anybody made hex tube, right? With the right thickness. And you're like, absolutely not. So I'd have to drill that out just to have the look correct. But it turns out he's got a lathe. So now it's like, oh, well, there's nothing really stopping me from doing that. We could. But, life, not what Jeff Goldblum said. Life gets in the way sometimes. It will find a way, but life gets in the way. I'm a little intrigued, too, by, I think video games have some of my favorite props and little things that I'd like to do. I mean, I already listed off the Zelda stuff, but there's even games that feel like they're kind of set in reality that just have really good aesthetics. Like, I don't know if anybody in the chat right now or if you guys have, but Far Cry always has really cool stuff going on. Always like artifacts and props and stuff. It's got a lot of that Indiana Jones vibe to it. But I don't know, any of the old Lara Croft stuff too. Back then, Lara Croft, when it's all just big chunky polygons, and you're like, what if I made a nice one polygons, of that?
Yeah. What about things like Prince of Persia or Assassin's Creed or?
Oh, the sand knife would be really, really neat. Oh, that would be really good. And I'm thinking the very first one that came out in like the new generation, where they actually showed how the knife went in and like pulled out the Sand of Time. That would be a really fun one. No one's done that. Why hasn't somebody made a Damascus that?
There we go.
There's the third thing for your list.
I'll put it on the list. Put it on the list.
Well,
actually really like
we
that.
mentioned film. We mentioned film and video games there. What about anything from TV?
I think a TARDIS, but done up in a
Yeah.
style. I know it's the big blue box, and definitely for, they made such an explosion of the big blue police box in the resurgence. But I'd like to do one that was just kind of more my style and make it black and put brass accents all over everything. It's like, yeah, it's still a TARDIS. It's just that if I was the Doctor, that's what it would look like. Doesn't look like any police box you'd necessarily want to walk into, but that's the point.
Yeah.
And
That
then
would be really cool.
I could learn a little bit about the tech, because I know it can't be that hard, but actually snap and have it open its door.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I was more of a fan of the Tennant. Like, I liked Matt Smith. I liked what Matt Smith did with it, but I was a big David Tennant. His run at the series was some of my favorite. And Heidi was nice enough years back. She 3D printed me a couple of different sonic screwdriver styles that I could like mix match together. And, I used one as a prop, I think, in the video right before I went to MC. But I think if I learned a little bit more machining, it would be really cool to make a sonic screwdriver that was just something stylistically mine.
I'd like to do a machine. My book there, my red book there, contains some of my lists of projects, and there's a stack of them are Whovian based. So there's
it looks that thick, but it's actually like
it's bigger inside. Yeah, it's bigger inside.
Well played.
A TARDIS would be great. Obviously, that's quite a big thing to do. But yeah, you can always do sort of TARDIS door frames and things like that.
There you go. That's it.
But yeah, K9, Dalek, sonic screwdrivers. But I want to make functioning sonic screwdrivers, so they actually do things. So it's not just a case of it's something. Oh, and it lights up. I actually kind of want to be able to use it. Maybe with something like a
RFID.
And kind of oh look, it's just opened that thing. That would be so cool.
Has anyone done a sort of, because obviously the other, the other nerd culture thing that is a cylindrical object that is unique to each holder of it is the lightsaber. So has anyone done a kind of a lightsaber sonic screwdriver hybrid yet? Because that would be a fantastic cosplay to do as like,
that would
like
be cool.
a doctor with a full robe, Jedi robe, and
oh my gosh, Sith Lord Doctor.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be so cool. Yeah.
Dr. Vader.
But he's still just really cocky. Like, instead of being dark and menacing, he's just really cocky because he knows more than everybody else. So he just walks in there acting the exact same way. And they're like, he's extremely dangerous. He's from the dark side. And he's just like, dark side, light side, whatever. Doesn't matter. I'm just smarter than all of you.
Wibbly wobbly midichlorian stuff.
Janie thinks you should make the frying pan from Tangled. I don't know what Tangled is. Darth Who. There it is. John nailed it.
I think that just gives me a thought. I can just sort of think, 10 years down the line, Doctor Who, and there's kind of like crossovers to Star Trek, Star Wars. Just having crossing over into anything based anywhere in the universe. It's like you could have MCU, kind of somebody Thanos is coming down to sort things out again, and Doctor Who turns up and goes, no, we're not having any of that. Go away, go away from Earth. I look after Earth. And Thanos goes, all right, I'm off.
I always kind of wondered if anybody had ever put together. I know I've seen some little memes or some little graphs that people have kind of fake put together of like who's the most powerful, pop culture hero that we have. I would like to see where Doctor Who sits on that. It's like, I don't know. Thanos had the gauntlet. He snapped half the people out of existence. Like, yeah, he needed a gauntlet. Doctor's got a sonic screwdriver. Does everything. He's like won universal wars plenty of times, or like defended Earth on multiple levels. He's got to be up there, right?
Yeah,
I imagine so.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've got a billionaire playboy philanthropist in a suit, and
he just goes like this, and the whole suit turns off. It's like, right. Oh, what are you powered by again? A micro reactor? How quaint. How quaint. Just shut it off.
Yeah, that'd be.
Yeah,
That'd
what
be
about
very...
TV shows though?
Yeah. So
Jamie,
what TV
what do you
shows?
got?
Again, I mean, it's. I'm a big Trek nerd, so any of the stuff from Star Trek, I'd love to have like a functioning tricorder. The closest I've sort of got is a thing called a Flipper Zero, which is kind of part sonic screwdriver, part tricorder, I suppose. You can do all sorts of stuff in it. It's got loads of sensors and things, and it's kind of step towards that kind of total nerdery. But I love anything like the cybernetic sort of stuff. One of my kind of goals for the next year or two is to do a headcast of mine, so I can do like prosthetic stuff. So we've been watching Star Trek Lower Decks recently, which is the sort of animated series, and one of the engineers in there has got this sort of cybernetic augmentation of this kind of eyepiece. I'd love to make something like that, or like fitted leatherwork things, stuff like that. Not Gimp mask type stuff, but more like
Borg.
Yeah, exactly. Something that's a bit more nerdy rather than the other side. But yeah,
I think that's why I want to do the Mandalorian stuff, because the challenge of making fitted pieces.
Yeah, exactly.
I've just never really done that before. I mean, even the Link costume stuff that I did, it's not really fitted. It's not really made specifically for me. Most of it's just kind of generic, or I just bought a set of gloves and made them brown. But I would like to do more fitted pieces and try my hand at actually doing. Al and I were talking about me doing the Full Metal Alchemist stuff with him. It's just, I know it's been forever. It's not like it's left my head. I still know that I want to do that at some point, and I'm making myself feel guilty even talking about it. But I'm supposed to make the entire arm for Ed, big metal arm, and make it fit me. And I don't know how I'm going to deal with comfort levels. And, I think at the time when we were talking about it, I was like, yeah, I can pull that off. And I kind of got a few reality checks after that. It was like, I think I have to try some more stuff or practice a little bit more before I just start cutting pieces out, rolling edges, and making things comfort fit. How the hell am I going to grind all these things? Okay, well, now I have a belt grinder. But back then I didn't. So it was all going to be a flap disc on an angle grinder, and I didn't trust myself very much. And then just the metal forming. I love blacksmithing for the idea of being able to reshape a rigid material, especially when it comes flat. But if I can make a Mandalorian armor or anything that fits me and fits my body that I've made by hand, especially if it was steel or even brass or bronze or something, fascinated by that. And I feel like the challenge alone is worth the attempt. Most likely going to fail.
Those kind of armor type things, the leather plate armor is kind of stuff that's on the list to do at some point. But even doing mail, I'd love to have a go at making some sort of chainmail type thing. But probably not out of steel, but I'm not sure.
I can pull the 50-pound mail hauberk I have. It's right here. It's right in this cabinet.
Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking something a little lighter. I used to have a bracelet that was it was like 3 runs. So it was a run of steel in the center, and then either side of that was 2 layers of rubber. So it's really, really cool. So it's got that kind of flexibility and stretch to it to go over your hand as a bracelet kind of thing. But it's just a really nice difference in being these little tiny rubber rings to make the mail up. I'd love to do something like that.
Super cool. I know it costs a bit more because of the production of the pieces, but they have the riveted chainmail links that they're more expensive, but it's because you can open them. They come pre-made with a little hinge in the middle. There's 2 or 3 actually on this piece that I have, And P.S. I found it on eBay being sold by somebody's mom that didn't know what they had, that just sold it as metal shirt. And if you guys have ever looked
Amazing.
into how much chainmail clothing costs, it is astronomical. Especially shipping it is crazy. I got it for like the same price as a t-shirt, basically.
Nice.
And this was like 6 or 7 years ago, and I couldn't say no. I had like absolutely no money to be spending on dumb stuff like that, but I knew I'd never find one like that again. And actually,
it's not like it's going to wear out.
Correct. Under the, I think it's stainless too. Like it's never rusted, so it's probably stainless, so even more expensive. But right underneath the armpit area, there are some of those rings, and I think they are there specifically to, if you need more movement, you can remove them, and it just kind of opens a seam, and then you can close them back up. I got away with a literal steal that day. I feel kind of bad about it, but I still use it. So like, it probably was going to get chucked into a garbage can somewhere, and I rescued it off eBay for metal shirt. It's 100% a real, like, very well made Hobart. Hold on.
I love those kind of. There's a whole like subset of people who don't search for the proper terms for things, and they just generate all those kind of weird, obscure things that other people will list stuff as.
And also searching for misspellings.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope everybody can hear all the fun sounds, but like, look, it's a full shirt.
Oh, amazing.
It's long. It's really well done, and it weighs 45 pounds.
And it's like a string vest, so perfect for Joshua Tree weather.
Yeah, it really is. I've worn it out plenty of times just to go do the grocery shopping. It's a conversation piece more than anything.
I don't doubt that.
The looks I would get. Oh my God. I'd be better off wearing anything from the Mad Max universe. That would play really well out here. I mean, there really are just desert weirdos out here aplenty.
The Interceptor from the Mad Max. That's another one on my list. Yeah, the original Interceptor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was just such a gorgeous car.
Yeah. I would. Red said mithril. I do think if you had so much patience to be able to do very, very fine, very small chainmail like that out of platinum, something ridiculous, something just completely outrageously priced. But if you could
money no object kind of.
Yes, money no object, just being able to make a beautifully woven piece of mithril.
It'd be really good to do, because the part of the platinum family is iridium is in that kind of the ore. So it'd be really cool to do that kind of like platinum iridium kind of. It'd be super, super expensive and absolute nightmare to do. And unless you pull the lead out as well, it would weigh an absolute ton. But that would be, if money was no object and you just got a group of jewelers together and said, right, okay, make me this.
I feel like, at some point, somebody's going to have some crazy windfall where one of us in the extended family crew of makers is going to be able to do something really stupid like that. This is like, hey, this isn't me. I'm not going out and buying cars. I'm not going out and buying a mansion. But I did spend $10,000 on a piece of mithril chain armor. Don't be mad at me. It looks really cool. I'll bring it to all the events.
Stuff for my friends. It's fine.
There you go.
So I'm thinking titanium. And then anodize it, because you can anodize titanium in different colors.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Essentially, it's an oxidation process, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. So you could almost have it so it's different colors, different portions.
I would like look good. Chainmail. I mean, I could put steel blackener on this thing and it would hold up for a while till it all starts moving and rubbing around. But Yeah. Okay, yeah. Going back to the Mandalorian thing, sorry. So when I was thinking about the Mandalorian thing, I know everybody's doing, the Beskar stuff where it's all high polish, and then we've seen people making the Damascus stuff and having it be Beskar steel. I would absolutely do black and brass and just have this very looming armor, like kind of blackened armor and stuff, and any of the small details that would be brassed or bronze color, including the main section of the mask. Like it would be black, but then just the face mask part would have to be bronze or brass. Because I feel like that would look menacing as hell. I feel like it's a little bit of a flex, right? Where you show up and you're like, what a fancy boy with your gold mask on. Nuke somebody from a mile away with a blaster. He's so fancy with his gold armor. Okay.
I think that would be the testament to it if it stayed that color as well. It's like, it's like boxers with big noses. Kind of, if it isn't all mashed and gnarled, then they must have either not boxed very much or been very, very good.
Yes.
I think if you've got that, kind of beautifully colored armor that isn't scratched to shit and isn't, covered in dents and things like that.
I think it was a really nice decision for them to make, because since Beskar is so durable and so tough, they can just reuse this like really nice high polished stuff to get these beautiful scenes with reflectivity and all the lighting that comes in or whatever. It's a really smart decision, because for a long time there, it used to be like, let's make everything darker and grungier, especially in the Star Wars universe. The pristine stuff was only for Coruscant, and any of the Jedi temples and stuff. So everything else needed to look dirty and scratched up and old. This choice that they made with him, where it's like, he has really good armor, but he basically had to fight for it or kill for it. But you also can't really tarnish it or hurt him. It, reflects blasters and whatever. Best episode of that show. Have you guys seen that show?
Yeah.
Both of you?
Some of it. Not seen all of it.
The best episode of Mandalorian to date was when Ahsoka Tano showed up. It is an homage to Kurosawa spaghetti western, old samurai flicks. It's the best episode. One of the best episodes of television, if we want to call it television with all these streaming platforms. That episode still is just, it just lights out for me. I love the aesthetic, the vibe, what they did with her. Rosario Dawson absolutely slayed that part. Actor.
Yeah,
absolutely. Totally. But people for so long were like, how can you make her real? Like, we're never going to be able to see her or anything because those head flaps are going to look weird, or they're going to get in the way, or like, how do you make somebody with that skin tone not look fake? Even though there's aliens and stuff like that. It was a really big push for them to bring basically what we saw in the Clone Wars series and actualize it. And it wasn't CG, and it was a real human that we knew was underneath the makeup. And her lightsabers were so cool, and they're white. Just get two of them.
And then we realized that she was in Men in Black 2, and
she was in Clerks 2. She was in
yeah.
When she was in Men in Black, she was a young lass. It's been a long time. She's been around for a long time, but now she's probably going to end up owning that role. Like, that's going to be the thing that people are going to really remember her by. And a lot of young fans of Star Wars that are getting introduced to all these new pieces of media, and they grew up with the prequels, or they grew up after the prequels came out. I listened to some nerd podcasts and stuff like that, and one of them, they were interviewing the voice actress of Ahsoka Tano from her voice acting career, but they had a big portion talking just about that character. And she's like, oh, as far as I'm concerned, like, when she shows up places, people are like, she is Ahsoka Tano. But now she's like, as far as I'm concerned, Rosario Dawson was the only person that could absolutely take that into live action, own it. And she's like,
totally.
She's got my sign off. Like, everything about it seems right. I'm excited for that series to happen. Big fan. Big fan of what's going on over there. I'm just not sure how. I don't want to talk a lot about it because I don't know how deep people have gotten into the Star Wars universe or the lore, and how much they're screwing with everybody back and forth by saying like what's lore, what's canon, what's not. They've made some decisions that toe the line and are pissing off both sides. And with what her storyline could be, I don't know. It could upset some people.
This is the thing with all of the star-based franchises, isn't it? Because it's the same thing
Star-based.
Well, you've got Wars and Trek and Gate and all of the other kind of star-based stuff, and every new bit of media that comes out, everyone goes, "You can't do that. That breaks this thing, and that can't be canon because of this." And so I'll just
Doctor Who's a classic for that as well. Yeah, all the kind of little things that I think, particularly if you go back to the classic Doctor Who, where I don't think they were necessarily keeping track of things in perhaps the way they did later on.
Nothing was about people need to remember this for next year.
Yeah,
they forgot nerds happen.
Well, and totally. Did nerds exist when Doctor Who first came out? I mean, 60 years ago, 59 this year, 60 years next year. Yeah, that's. I think people
didn't have the same tools they do now.
Well, no, they didn't. But get into the kind of 80s, 70s, and 80s, people start doing that, and particularly when you kind of had these sort of franchises like Star Wars, and Star Trek, going onto TV, and and cinema, and things like Blake Seven, Space 1999, Doctor Who, Hitchhikers. They kind of this was just fuel for the nerds to kind of go, oh yeah, I like this, and to come out into the open and start collecting it and start collating things together in a way that perhaps hadn't ever been done before, and then following these kind of sort of lines going. I mean, I don't think it necessarily has to be space-based. Yeah, I can remember 12, 13 years old, reading a book about the life of James Bond that somebody put together based on all the James Bond books. And this was kind of, still when it was only the Fleming books, before the sort of John Gardner or anyone else sort of written any. And it was just like, he was from Scotland, his mother was French, and all these sort of little bits of information. And it was a 180-page book. Just on kind of, James Bond and all his travels. And that wasn't even looking at the kind of the different character presentations based on different actors.
Do you think there's just been more of a request, let's say from nerd culture, that they want to be able to hold on to things longer or have the world build itself out, and maybe it didn't used to exist like that back then? Like people were a little bit more okay with just this thing ran its course, or even something like Bond way back in the day. My father used to love watching all the old James Bond movies, but it didn't really matter that the person changed, right? But in the last decade, people have gone, oh, but we can't have a person of color, and you can't make him a woman. Like, that's not 007. And there's arguments from all sides about why you can, why you can't, why you shouldn't. Well, it's not the character. Okay, well, in the lore, and you're like, it gets so noisy with all of that stuff. And maybe we just call it simpler times 50 years ago where people didn't really care. But I feel like people really want to care about those things. And let them breathe for longer than maybe it's the attention span of social media now. It's like, hey, can we please have something that lasts longer than 2 months?
Well, I think as well, like you said before about you craving new media, and I think the flip side to that is the folks who crave the comfort of old media. And I think that there's that escapism to simpler times or good memories from the past or things that were good associations. So I think if you've got a franchise that you've got anchored to good memories within your very core of your being, and then someone says, oh, well, actually you can have a little bit more of that, that kind of expands your bubble of what comfort is. So I think that there's an element of that, I'd say, as well. I think especially in the kind of the troubled times that we're sort of seeing more and more of. I think there's more and more push for people to be able to escape into those things. That kind of the expanse of crap in the world versus the expanse of media that you can kind of escape into. It's kind of almost equally matched, I think.
Yeah, I find that to be just, if you look at it from a macro view, you start to see the double-edged sword of all of that, where especially with the business of media making, here's more Star Wars stuff. Oh, thank you. I love Star Wars. Oh no, I didn't like that one Star Wars you put out. And then, it's like, it's almost like watching M. Night Shyamalan at this point, where you're like, maybe I watch every other one, or maybe I watch every 3. Like, Andor is out right now. I haven't even started it yet because I didn't really like Boba Fett that much. I was never a huge Boba Fett fan, like some of the people that I knew that were Star Wars fans, but was never really into Boba Fett. And then I thought what they did with that series, it just didn't really do much for me. I've heard really good things about Andor.
Yeah, I've heard quite a few people say that Andor's well worth watching.
I really wanted Solo to be good. I did not like.
Yeah, I haven't seen that either, or the Book of Fett. But again, I mean, I only want to watch that for Ming-Na Wen because she's phenomenal. And it's picking your battles, isn't it? There's so
it really
to
is.
Consume.
It really is. People that want reboots of things, and we were talking about Firefly and stuff earlier. The people that have pushed and pushed and pushed for years, like, let's get a Firefly reboot.
Yeah,
guys, I don't really think you understand that there's a good chance that won't go well. There is I would say there's a better chance of that kind of failing or being mediocre rather than being successful.
Well, it's never going to live up to the hype of the last 20 years of people building up what it could be.
Exactly. And there's been fan fiction written about it. There's been multiple books and backstories and things that are, people have built out this world of these crew members and things. Alan Tudyk, everybody's 20 years older. Have you seen what these guys look like now? Like, given basically all the women in that show are still mind-blowingly beautiful and still look like they haven't aged a day. But, Nathan Fillion's, he's older, and Alan Tudyk is not even a part of it anymore. So how do you build that world out and have it be accepted by the massive fandom that's been growing around it?
And we lost Ron Glass as well, didn't we?
Yeah. Oh, that hurts too. Yeah, I don't know. The reboot culture, the idea of like people pulling things out of nostalgia, and Al had a really good point that he made when we were kind of talking about this a couple months ago, but pulling things out of nostalgia and only for the nostalgic reasons, so that you can go, hey, remember when you liked that thing? And you go, you get 20 seconds of a little dopamine rush or something from your childhood where you go, I remember eating at a mall. I'm watching Stranger Things season whatever, where it takes place in the mall. And I like Stranger Things. I like what they did with it. I remember watching that first season of it and having I used to be an animator computer person. So the title sequence came in and I was like, oh my God, they nailed it. This is exactly an 80s, John Carpenter film. Here it goes.
Yeah.
So I was so hyped on that first season, but then it's just, I feel like very regularly watching that show in its later seasons, it's just nostalgia for nostalgia's sake, or they just keep making decisions that are meant to tickle that little funny bone that we've all got of, remember that thing? Oh, remember when that one was the thing? Oh, there's an old advert for some company that doesn't exist anymore, but it doesn't actually do anything to push the story forward or have any character development added to the piece. So I even, I'm on both sides. I want more of that, but I also don't like when you give me the wrong thing that I want from that. So I know I'm a total hypocrite.
I think that's the problem, though, isn't it? Is realizing that, something like the first season of that, you were absolutely the target demographic. But then the second season of that, you're no longer the target demographic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that I have to try and keep in mind whenever I'm sort of analyzing like my reaction to something. It's like, is this meant for me? You know, it's the same way, you know, like you were saying before about, you know, the you know, can Bond be not a white dude? You know, is that kind of in all of these things, the answer is unequivocally yes, of course.
Yes.
And you are just no longer the target demographic.
Exactly.
You know, let someone
And
else have a try.
there was a lot of people getting pretty hyped, I myself included, when they were discussing putting Idris Elba in that role.
It would have been
Like,
so
there,
good.
It would be
there's
so
your
good.
gateway, and then just
Yeah.
let it run from there. Because if you put this amazing black actor in this role to just change all this BS, you know, and people arguing, then I feel like it opens a gateway into a lot more options from then on. And, you know, in the world that we're living in with, you know, gender acceptance and, you know, lifestyle differentials and all that kind of stuff, it's still kind of sickening to hear the people that are just so close-minded or are just so caught up in the old ways of things. That I remember when the new Bond came out, and, you know, the female actress in there is like, but I'm 007. And people were like, no, you can't do that. It's ridiculous. It was actually a joke within the movie. It's like they did it on purpose just to get a rise out of people. And people still went crazy and then took it after the movie came out and were like, if this is what they're planning on doing, I'm not going to watch this anymore. Like, okay, then don't. I'm sorry Daniel Craig is not with us in this series anymore. But I love that, you know, Doctor Who got its resurgence and then started to really play with what does the idea of the Doctor mean? And yeah, they went, you know, I can't remember the first actor's name who came back in season 9. He's a pretty well-known British actor. He's been in some movies that I've seen. But then you get
Pre-Tenant.
Yes, the guy right before Tenant.
McGann.
There you go.
No, McGann was the film, wasn't he? Oh, crikey.
I can't remember his
I
name.
was literally, because I've not done Doctor Who at all, but I was talking about this with Ellen the other day.
Yeah.
Because she was talking about Doctor Who.
Yeah,
You
but
know, Eccleston.
it eventually got
Eccleston.
around.
Eccleston, yeah.
They went, there you go, Eccleston. Got it. Thank you to you guys and also Alex. Yeah. So they went through their shift, you know, they got it back, and then they went Tennant, and then they went Matt Smith, and then they went kind of old white guy again. But nobody could get mad at the choice that they made because all great actors in their own right. And then when they went with Jodie Whittaker, a bunch of people, you know, raised a stink about it. And then now they're going to have the first young African-American actor in there. Great. Keep shifting. Like it's now becoming the little subculture that really took over Doctor Who fandom has now grown and grown and grown. And this, it ebbs and flows like all of the other fandom and every other piece of media does. But for the most part, what they're showing is that this idea, this character can be anything, can be anyone. Doesn't have to be male, doesn't have to be female, doesn't have to be any color, doesn't matter. Because the idea of the Doctor is what's most important about the show. And I would love to see more of that taking over. Doesn't have to be main characters or huge flagship brands, but shaking it up like that is only going to help everybody. It's going to give jobs to people that otherwise may not have ever had that opportunity.
And expand the pool of diversity that is going to bring in new aspects, new points of view, new experiences.
I met so many people. I went to a fancy dress party like 6 or 7 years ago, dressed as Matt Smith's Doctor. And I met so many people that night that I knew 2 people that were at this party. I met so many people that night that I would have never talked to just because they were Doctor Who fans. And then we just started talking about Doctor Who. And it was brilliant. I love being able to do something like that. And I know anybody that's ever been to a con, because most of us are nerdy enough, but if you've ever been to a con and you feel like you're the only person that really likes this one thing, you're dead wrong.
Yeah,
there are so many people.
Going to be others. Yeah.
So we're planning to go to MCN Comic Con at the NEC in Birmingham in 2 weeks' time.
Woo!
and Ron Perlman's going to be there.
You're gonna
He's
talk to Ron Perlman? God,
Well, so this is the thing. So far, because London Comic Con was this weekend, so they'd announced on the run up to it, they'd announced like shitloads of people, just list after list after list, and so far they've only announced 5 people that are going to be at Birmingham. Ron Perlman, 2 WWE wrestlers, and 2 voice actors from anime. That's all they've announced so far.
Who is it from? Who are the voice actors?
I can't remember.
I don't know about you guys. I watch enough animated stuff. I've actually, over the last few years, I've gotten massively into following certain voice actors.
I'll dig them out, but they're not massively well known. From 2 of the people we're going with are anime fans, and they were like, wasn't the ones we were hoping for.
Okay, that's fine. I heard John DiMaggio and his partner come out to Palm Springs, which is only like 45 minutes from me, that they travel out here from LA all the time and just like hang out in Palm Springs. It just makes me want to go to Palm Springs. I hate that place, really, to be honest, but I would love to just be walking around and then run into Bender and Jake the dog and all of the other voices that I've ever heard him do growing up. Billy West, I feel like sitting down and having an hour talk with Billy West would probably just open your mind up to a completely different way of thinking. These are people who effectively acted behind the scenes forever for the majority of their career. And then they realized that there were fans that just wanted to know who they were. And they're like, wait, you actually just want to talk to me and not just have me do the voice that I do? And they're like, yeah, because you're great. And you're the person behind that. And then I think John DiMaggio was the one that produced the I Know That Voice documentary that came out a couple years ago. Which, if you haven't watched that, anybody that's here listening, I Know That Voice is very special. It's very, very special. You basically see all of the voice actors and actresses and peoples from stuff way back. They have the delightful old woman who used to voice Rocky the Squirrel in Rocky and Bullwinkle. She's like 150 years old in the documentary, and she's in there and she starts doing the voice, and she's just this tiny little old lady, and she starts doing the Rocky voice. It's just brilliant.
That was, you've just broken a thought for me there, and that was what I was trying to think of the other day. I was chatting with my wife, and we were talking about she was talking about something that she'd seen that was from her youth, and I had Rocky and Bullwinkle in my head, but I couldn't remember what the hell it was called for the life of me. I just had this picture in my head that was nothing I could describe to try and Google.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, that's thank you. That's just brought it all flooding back.
This is a little insight, and this is really just between Red and I. I won't give out any of the details of it or anything like that, but it's just a fun little thing that we do. If you happen to make friends with anybody about your fandom or nerddom, one thing that he and I discuss is that we both actually have like little black books, but instead of phone numbers and dates, they are movies or pieces of media. And I've got like little descriptions written next to each one, or like little ratings. I've changed my ratings like 15 times because I was like, star ratings don't work. 1 through 10 also doesn't work. I hate it. But for the better part of, well, it's been over a decade now, I went back. I Googled some list of like every movie that's ever been made. And I just sat and scrolled through and I was like, okay. And then, yeah, I saw that one. And I saw that one. And I saw that one. And at some point in my future, I will. It's not like I'm looking to publish a book of like, here's all the movies I watched. But I would love to have that thing if I was wearing a suit jacket on a regular basis. Just periodically in the middle of a conversation with somebody and be like, have you ever seen this thing? And I'm like, I can't remember. What's it about? Ooh, hold on. Let me reference my note about it. Oh, there was a scene in there where the boom mic was in the shot. Yeah, that was stupid. Because I think at this point I've ingested so much stuff, and I really do like watching new things. They don't have to be new, as in produced now. I'm just anything that I can find
You
that
haven't
I've
seen before.
missed over the years. Yeah. Red gave me a few suggestions for some foreign films I had never seen. I had a friend in college that was half Korean. He introduced me to Old Boy. If you've ever seen Old Boy, that movie will absolutely screw you up. Not the Josh Brolin one. Jesus, talk about reboots. They didn't need to do that. They absolutely didn't need to do that. But he introduced me to a bunch of East Asian films that really started to boggle my mind because it was a completely different approach without the American business side being put on it. And then some Middle Eastern films and stuff came after that. So I've just got this running little black book of nonsense that I've seen. I haven't done one for video games because I think they are slightly cost and platform prohibitive. Like if you don't have a PlayStation, you can't just play PlayStation games. But this little black book idea has now, I've talked about it a couple of times in passing, and I realized that I'm not going to say it's the most unique thing, but like nobody does this. Why would you write down every movie you've ever seen?
Well, so there is I think IMDb does it now anyway, but there is an app that will let you do that kind of thing.
There's a checklist?
A checklist of movies, and you can add notes and stuff to them as well.
I mean, there's one for books. I mean, Goodreads.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the same, the equivalent. A couple of friends of mine are working their way through the IMDb top 100 films.
Oh, I mean, it's a very solid top 100.
Yeah.
Weighted towards a couple of directors that I don't necessarily agree with, but top 100 is a good place to just start knocking them out because at least you'll see why they're up there.
Yeah, exactly.
I do like that list. I had a friend of mine. He and I went through the majority of the Criterion collection while we were in college, at least up to that point. So you knock out those top 100 on IMDb, a little bit more mass audience movie. Then you get into the Criterion stuff where you're like, how do we even find a copy of that? And we're like, well, you got to call somebody in Germany and they have to ship it to you. It's not going to have subtitles because it's German only. So then you have to get a translation thing and then like run this app that'll translate it, and you have to watch it on your computer through VPN or not VPN, but VLC.
VLC, yeah.
Well, there are some restrictions to being able to watch those things and actually understand them. But the Criterion collection is one that if you have the time and possibly the money to invest in, that's an interesting list as well. Because did you know like every Wes Anderson movie is on that list in the Criterion collection? Which are supposed to be like the collection of movies. But RoboCop's on there and every Wes Anderson movie's in there. But RoboCop is a satire that no one realizes is a satire, so you can't actually bank that one.
See, that's another one. RoboCop's another one that messed me up as a kid. That I think just kind of ruined me for a lot of like the Goalfest stuff. I think I just perhaps saw it a little bit too young. And you know, just kind of like that, and you know, internet access just kind of, you know, took the edge off a lot of the stuff that horror movies and Goalfests are kind of playing on. Desensitized to, you know, seeing the guy's hand being blown off at that point. You know, 'cause you saw it when you were in the film when you were like 10 or 12 or however old I was when I saw that.
I think that's why like Terminator and Terminator 2 are just more easily digestible for me.
Yeah,
because they're just as action rompy and crazy, but because it's a robot, they don't have to adhere to gore. Even when you see him, you know, the famous bathroom scene and he's cutting his skin off or whatever, it's not as gory because you know he's a machine underneath that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, he's just getting rid of the stuff that's in the way. So it never came across as gory. It was just like, oh, he's just being more efficient. Now you can see this cool metallic piece underneath. Blowing somebody's hand off and showing it in slow motion, or the man's skin falling off, is that was a bit much for me when I was a young buck. I haven't revisited RoboCop since the Criterion Collection watching, but I don't think I need to again anytime soon. I really don't.
Yeah, it's all right. They'll reboot it again soon.
They already did that a couple years ago. Oh yeah. Who was that with? Who did that? What actor did that? Somebody decent size did the RoboCop reboot. Army Hammer? Question mark?
I don't know.
I must have missed that.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen it.
It's fine. Andy, don't even worry about it. Just let it pass straight through your brain.
I'm always wary of reboots, though. I mean, like Jimmy said, it's about the audience. I mean, the one for me, Hitchhikers. Yeah, I grew up on the book and the radio series, the TV series, particularly the TV series and the book. And then the film came out. Yeah, Martin Freeman, great actor. Love nearly all his work. But he's just not Arthur Dent to me.
Wow.
He's just Arthur Dent is thinner, taller, dark haired. Just doesn't fit the bill to me. And just so many of the other things that weren't quite right, just because the mental images I have are based around having read the book dozens of times, having watched the TV series not dozens of times, but multiple times. And so I've got an entire world built on that in my head.
This is so difficult.
It doesn't fit.
But it's the same.
It's a perfectly good film. It's a perfectly good film.
Yeah.
Just doesn't fit with my version of Hitchhikers that's in my head.
So I've seen the movie more than I've seen the TV series, but I've read the books more than either. But I still visualize reading the books like the movie. But it's the same, with every crossover, though, isn't it? The famous one with the Harry Potter stuff. Everyone other than the description of Snape being Alan Rickman, and then the actor being Alan Rickman. That matches perfectly, but none of the others do.
Right. Hitchhiker's Guide is very difficult for me though, because I didn't get introduced to that until maybe halfway through college. So I had no awareness that there was a TV show. I read the book and then I watched the movie and I was like, this is delightful. They left a ton of stuff out of the movie, but it was pretty delightful. I also hadn't been following Martin Freeman very much at the time. I was listening to the album Black on Both Sides by Mos Def, so I happen to be a huge fan of him because that album is great. Alan Rickman, who doesn't like him, I had no mental image of what Marvin looked like. And Zooey Deschanel was the new manic pixie dream girl that everybody was talking about. So for me, the timing of when I saw that movie, I was absolutely fine with the movie. And you tack on the fact that the actor who played Zaphod, whose name is
Sam Rockwell.
I got to meet him when I lived in Las Vegas, and he was a delightful character. He's a very, very nice guy, and I just became kind of a big fan of him after that. Green Mile, he was great in that. I thought all parties were great. I also really appreciated the improbability drive and actually them doing like the pops, and then you see them, pulling string out. All of that. The Vogons, I thought, were, to take it back to the beginning of our conversation, they were just Montechuans, but ugly. Fifth Element coming back. But Stephen Fry, this all made sense to me, is what I'm saying. Like everything about that movie made sense to me. The visuals.
Stephen Fry had to be the narrator. There was no one else it could have.
Yeah, and he's the only version.
The very first Apple Mac sold in the UK was bought by Douglas Adams, and the second one was bought by Stephen Fry. They were very, very, very close friends.
Wow.
So there's such a huge close connection with Stephen Fry, and Hitchhikers being a huge Douglas Adams, being a very close friend of his.
Oh, that's.
But that was like where I've talked before about the movie, because the time that was around was because Douglas Adams was involved with the screenplay for the film. But at the time, because it being such a huge, he was a massive Apple fan, and the film has a really, really strong Apple aesthetic for that time period of like the IMAX and all that kind of like clean white lines, and it's all that. It's very, very how Douglas would have envisioned it at that time as well. I think now, if he was still around and if they did it in this sort of time period, it would all be anodized aluminium, crisp edges, and that kind of thing, because that was his aesthetic. That was the thing that he saw and he loved and he interacted with.
It's just
it does fit. It does make sense when you understand the context around it.
The differences in some of the script choices that they made or whatever, and it's not 100% true to the book, but I still can't get over the amount of times. Yeah, the amount of times I'll walk over to a door and just like try and do the handle or whatever, but it's locked from the other side. I'm like, hold on, what is this? This is nothing. We're gonna die, and no one gets that. But it's just a little dumb line that most dev throws out there before they get ejected. And like, I think I've said that maybe twice in my life that people have actually picked up on. Like, was that a Hitchhiker's Guide reference? But it means, is it a reference to the movie? So they had to understand the movie and like it a lot. It's another thing entirely where I can make an argument against the scene where, there's that entire chapter talking about how Arthur's trying to explain T to the computer, and that's why its guidance system goes offline. And in the movie, they just make it look like the mice are doing something. And so that whole buildup of why the computer is having so many problems, and like it doesn't understand the concept of T, and it adds more to the joke. And in the movie, they just 86 it and said the mice are going to be doing something on the circuit board. And you just get rid of that. And I loved that one little section of the book. I remember always being like, if there was one thing that I would put back in the movie, that would have to go back in there.
Explaining the East India Tea Company.
Yes. Something resembling tea.
So this is where, while we're on that kind of Douglas Adams train, is the other franchise of his that was, for some reason, the name in my head and has just evaporated.
Dirk Gently?
Dirk Gently, thank you. The TV shows, there's been 2 attempts at making a TV show for Dirk Gently. And they're both wonderful for 2 different reasons. But in my head, 2010, I think, was the British version of the Dirk Gently. And Stephen Mangan played Dirk Gently. And he plays a really, really good Dirk. But then I don't think that Dirk in the modern one that they did for Netflix, I don't think he's as Dirk Gently as Dirk Gently is in the books. But I think all of the surrounding characters and all of the extra nods that they put in there make it a far better Dirk Gently.
Which one did I even see? Because I watched through one entirely.
Did it have
the one with
Wood?
Elijah Wood?
Yeah,
that's the one I saw.
So 10 years before that was the British version of it, and they did like a pilot episode, and then they did kind of 3 follow-on episodes. It was like a second season, if you like. And just like with the books, because the books have had this kind of mythos around them of not being able to count to 3. It was 2 books, and he was halfway through writing the 3rd. And then with the TV show, they made the pilot, and then they made like a second series, and then it didn't get renewed. And then same with the Elijah Wood one, is they made 2 seasons, they had a plan for a 3rd, and then it didn't happen. And there's this kind of like curse around Dirk Gently. But again, it's a fantastic one if you go back to it, because it's so very British and so what you would imagine again of the time. It was 10 years before. It wasn't CG. It was all really kludgy and Dirk Gently-ish. It was all. Yeah, it's just if you get a chance to watch it, it's fantastic.
Well, I think this is why, just talking about Hitchhiker's Guide specifically, And Andy, I'm not trying to argue because I have had many a conversation with people that were like devout Douglas Adams fans. I'm like, yes, I understand there are aspects of the movie that are just not good, or we can all agree that this part
it's
probably
a
didn't.
great film. It's a good film.
It's okay.
It's a good film.
But the book is so good. The book is
Yes.
so good.
Yeah.
And there are just moments of the movie that really lack that Douglas Adams panache that he had. And, you know, but to offset it, there are a couple of moments that were choices made by the production company or the editor where when the Vogons first land and everything goes down and then it does the pullout, dun, 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 and it just extends that buildup way longer than it needs to. Felt kind of like that dry sense of humor coming back, elevated by the music and the editing, of course. But it's just like, yeah, and then they were going to blow up the planet. And then it doesn't happen. It takes a 45-second build up and even just one big wide shot that holds a little too long. And then poof. And they never talk about it again. Like, that's the end of it, right? And then they move along to, oh, your world was destroyed and everything. But moments like that where it felt like they tried to lean into his version of comedy with that long build up to a kind of underwhelming hilarity, right? And you're like, oh, the payoff actually wasn't as big or extravagant as it seemed like it was going to be, but that's why it's funny, is because it's actually very underwhelming.
It's borderline dad jokes, isn't it? It's not going for the funny ha ha laugh. It's going for that kind of reaction.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly what it is. I don't know, everything Marvin delivers in the book, or even just, you know, having Alan Rickman actually voice that was what a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Fun movie, but yeah, it all goes back to what we were talking about a half hour ago, where it's like it's a double-edged sword of wanting more, getting something, maybe being unhappy with portions of it or all of it, or, you know, us as our little nerddom fan groups that we're in. It's kind of difficult to always want more of the thing that Jamie said. It's like the nostalgia, that thing that just warms your heart, your comfort space. Oh, I want more of that. Oh, I want so much more of that. And then you get it, and you've either created a new group of fans and brought more people in, or you've distanced that kind of thing. I mean, to be honest, I feel really bad for the people that get involved in those kind of situations, that get just pushed into the business of making the media now. I feel like the Marvel thing is a really prime example of what it means to have a few of those shows come out before everything in the Avengers universe and the extended MCU stuff kicked in. You remember those first few Marvel shows that came out that like didn't quite hit? Something was wrong. You know, Daredevil came out kind of there towards the beginning, and people were like, well, I like the movies more, and I kind of want to go see more Iron Man stuff. Okay, we'll give you more Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. Here we go. He's going to be in 14 movies. Thor was like, oh, cool, look at Chris Hemsworth, and we got Natalie Portman in this. Yeah, first movie's not great. Second movie is a real not great situation. And then they kind of started to find their footing again. And if anybody saw Love and Thunder, the most recent one, it's a line in the sand. Like, you either liked it or you just went, no.
Yeah.
And that's strange for one of these Marvel movies. But if you don't like Taika Waititi...
Well, I mean, there's a severe problem right there if whoever doesn't like him, you know...
You're not signing up for the sense of humor. And then She-Hulk got some weird flack. I remember when that got out, people were like, really, they're going to spend money on this She-Hulk show?
But I mean, again, I think that's people not realizing that it's not for them. You know, that they're not the target demographic in that sense. It was the same with a couple of the recent ones, because they've all been, you know, not just aimed at middle-aged, middle-class white dudes. Yeah, there's a little bit more of diversity in general.
Black Widow's got some real issues in its special effects. It's actually They're on some special effects channels that I watch, like some guys that talk about special effects and they'll kind of do breakdowns of things. There's a few moments in the movie that are just really bad for the budget that it had. But it was nice that they dove into her backstory more, understanding a little bit more of why she was built the way that she was and how she'd
Yeah.
always make little hints at not being able to have kids. But let's not talk about that too much in the billion-dollar movie franchise that we've got going on, because people don't want to hear that, especially not from a female character. Like, let's not say she can't have babies with Bruce, because we have to think that they're going to be in a traditional relationship, even though he's a rape monster. And everything's going to be fine, but we have to be able to pretend that they will have kids one day and they will be super kids. And you're like, no, you don't have to do that. But they really steered clear of talking about any of that stuff. And they really actually invested in that in her film, which was nice.
Yeah, I think they could have done more for her as a character, I think.
Yes.
But I do think that they did at least do a step in the right direction compared to what some people were expecting.
We'll just see either how long is it going to take, or who's going to be the person that can step in and kind of own it. Because Robert Downey Jr. was such a good choice for Iron Man, because he didn't actually have a film that was like definitively he was the reason that film was good. You had Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and some other fun ones that he was in, or he was a lead actor, and he did a good job. But him owning, if you watch the original Iron Man movie, he's not just a dickhead. He's like the worst kind of person. He's a pretty bad guy. And then he, heart of gold underneath it all. And we get the reveal of everything. But they really made him an unlikable asshole for the first two movies.
Yeah.
And he grew out of it. And somebody would have to do that to like really be able to step into a role where everybody's casting hate, or everybody's going, oh, what a stupid character for them to spend money on. Or I can't believe we have to hear about so-and-so's backstory from whatever. No one cares about it. It's going to be a woman. It's going to be a female, or the first like non-binary that they go and actually like they're going to put somebody androgynous in it and say man or woman doesn't matter. And people are going to raise a stink about it. But whoever can own that and really drive it home.
I think there's been a few of those kind of from various things, like people like in the Eternals. I think in things like that, there was a lot of that got panned. And it's a wonderful movie in its own right. It wasn't the same stuff that everyone was expecting, but for looking at the film itself and the actors involved, and really, really good.
Yeah,
I think it's Harry Styles at the end.
I think it's one of my favorite decisions that they made I'm a little like washy on Doctor Strange and that series, just because it's so far beyond any kind of reality, which is his entire thing. But it just gets like not only complex, but just none of the rules matter and nobody has consequences. You can just kind of shoot all that right off the table. But they make Tilda Swinton, who has played like the most boudoir female you've ever seen, but has also gender bent in movies before. And she's played a little bit of the androgynous, even in Constantine. Michael the Archangel was meant to be this very androgynous creature, whatever. Put Tilda Swinton in it. Constantine is also an amazing movie if no one's seen that.
Yes, Constantine is phenomenal.
Yes, but she is...
As is the TV series.
There you go. But putting Tilda Swinton in as, the character that he has to interact with and kind of learn his ways, whatever, I felt like that was a really good additive to what they had traditionally been doing, where guy has to learn from older guy, or woman has to learn from older woman, or something or other. I don't know. Maybe that's why Yoda always kind of worked, because he inherently was just kind of like an old, creepy man creature, but he was just a puppet at the end of the day. So he didn't feel super intimidated, and that's what made him feel so much more. Let's not go into the CGI saber fight he had with Dooku, but Yoda was a good choice for a mentor. I think Tilda Swinton being involved was a pretty cool choice.
So another actor who's I would say has got the ability to follow in Tilda Swinton's footsteps would be Samantha Morton, who was in Minority Report.
Ooh.
She's another actress who's very good at playing a role that you wouldn't necessarily expect. Very good at that kind of. Well, I mean, the character in Minority Report, being this very unhinged, broken character, precognitive kind of creature, but phenomenal actor, in that kind of same vein as Tilda Swinton.
Did you guys like Minority Report? I like that movie.
Yeah,
like that
but I'm a big Philip K. Dick fan anyway. So
okay.
I mean, of course, like most of the book adaptations, it's very little of the actual original stories, isn't there? Because it's a very short story that they've turned into a 3-hour movie. But,
yeah.
But I still, so one of my favorite Philip K. Dick books is Paycheck. And that was turned into a film, which I still haven't plucked up the courage to watch because I'm not a Ben Affleck fan. And he's the lead in it. And it's that thing of being so invested in the story of the book. I don't want the film to ruin it.
I feel like that's got to be an added degree of difficulty, kind of high on the list of added difficulty, is how do you appease the nerddom and find an actor, actress, person, anybody that can fill the shoes of what's been built up. It's like every time they've had a new Batman ever since Nolan, which, for God's sakes, please stop making them. Or just like give us a break. But I can't see Ben Affleck. I was never able to put Ben Affleck and Batman together. I think the new one they did with the young lad that I can't remember his name. He was in Twilight. That was his thing. And he was Cedric. He was Cedric Diggory.
He was.
Movies. But he did great. That movie's just like, we just had too many at this point. They went dark and it was great. The production value was great. It was 4 hours longer than it needed to be, but otherwise a decent movie. This idea that you can build up a character, like we're almost going back to the Bond stuff now, like who could fill the role, or Ahsoka Toa. But when you have a piece of media that's never been Robert Pattinson, thank you. When you have a piece of media that's never been actualized or realized, and these people are meant to pick somebody out of a crowd of actors that can fill this role, and then what if they get it wrong? Like who's the young
Jack
lad
Reacher.
that got to play the Flash that has just like completely gone off the rails?
Ezra Miller.
There you go. They had a bunch of stuff lined up and projects, and a movie I think is like already done, but they're maybe not going to put it out because of the flack that is going on with that person. So
but they'll still release stuff from the other complete lunatic in a similar vein of lunacy. Oh my god, absolutely useless words.
Bailing on names.
Yeah, he was. He's got a whole kind of cult around him. It's gone a little bit weird.
I can't think of anybody right now. I don't know that.
Morbius. He did Morbius.
Oh, Jared Leto. Yeah,
fella.
Yeah, which is too bad because I was more of an X-Men fan growing up than I was Spider-Man. But I did like Morbius and some of Spider-Man's character offshoot. I don't know, bad guys turn good, good guys turn bad type deal. Morbius was in that. He was in the cartoons in the 90s, and he was a fun character. It's too bad they chose him. It's also too bad that he was in Blade Runner 2049 because I could have done without seeing his dumb face in that movie. Because I really wanted to just enjoy that for what it was, which was going to be like kind of a reboot, but like just show me some cool visuals, give me some Ridley Scott nostalgia, and I'll feel okay about it. And they put Jared Leto in there. Hate him. Anyway, let's not get on that soapbox about
Let's change the subject slightly.
Go for it.
Is there a book that you would like to see made into a film that hasn't?
Ooh. Oh boy. Oh boy. So maybe two off the top of my head. One, I would love to see somebody try and handle Restaurant at the End of the Universe.
Yeah.
Even if it was like a mini series, just like give me a couple of smaller things. It doesn't have to be some giant property getting put out in a movie theater, but like somebody that could take a crack at what happens next, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe adhere more to the book. I think I would appreciate that. But I've been getting into a lot of audiobooks over the last couple of years. Some of them have been realized in some capacity in media, but I think, oh gosh, you're gonna make me. So I have to step into this role as the double-edged sword of nerddom, right? Ready Player One is not the greatest story that's ever been written by any means, but it was a fun book. It was easy to read.
Yeah.
And they had Will Wheaton narrate the book in the audiobook, which is it's just nostalgia and awesome all over the place. What Spielberg did with Ready Player One was awful. Like to so many different degrees. He changed so many things that didn't need to happen. He took away Dungeons and Dragons because it was too old of a property to make references to. He forced a love story between two of the characters, forced it in his film, and like the main character was a super creep. And anybody that acts like that should not ever get the girl at the end. It was horrifying. If you watch that movie compared to how the book built up all the relationships, there were real deaths in the book. There were consequences in that book.
Yeah.
And in the movie, it was a wash of how many people come here and notice the Easter eggs in the background. And also just like, give me a derivative story. We get it. It's about video games. It felt like Steven Spielberg walked in and just went, what's going to sell tickets?
Yeah.
And then destroyed the story and rebuilt it into that thing. Used a lot of the same references and some of the visuals, but for the most part, terribly done. You want to talk about doing a reboot that I would actually like to see somebody do well? Show me Ready Player One. Wouldn't mind seeing it. Could be a fan flick. The last one that I'll say is Project Hail Mary, which I know is going to be a movie.
Ooh, yeah.
They're already working on it, but Steve, Mr. Moonshine, told me to get that book, so I listened to the audiobook. Same narrator as all of his other books, but man, what a fun story. What a fun story. I'd like to see somebody be able to pull it off because almost like The Martian, small set pieces. There's really not a lot going on in that movie.
Yeah.
We'll see what they do with the last couple of chapters, but vignettes, couple of vignettes, small set pieces. You could get good actors for it. Budget wouldn't be outrageous. I don't know that they're even far enough along to have announced anybody, but
I
hope they do a good job on it.
They did announce one of the actors.
Really?
Yes. I can't remember who it was.
Okay.
Apparently, I've contracted Steveism tonight.
What's the guy with the face?
Ryan Gosling.
Exactly. That's the fella.
Ryan Gosling.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. That's fine. Is not who I pictured being the high school science teacher, but what is Ryan Gosling doing teaching? Whatever. Did they have to
That's
get
gonna be a
somebody
good.
that
That's
good
gonna be a
looking?
good film. It's gonna be. A good
It
film.
will be good.
I
You
hope.
know what? He was great in Drive. I'll like him forever because he was great in Drive. And 2049, he did a pretty good job, all things considered. So
Yeah.
I
I'm
have
hoping that they do
opinions if you
7
haven't
Eves
picked
at
up
some
on it.
point.
What's that?
I'm hoping they do 7 Eves at some point, and that would be a really good one to do. But there's a fantastic book by an author called Rob Grant, who people in the UK will know as one of the authors of, or one of the writers of Red Dwarf. But he did a book called Incompetence, which is kind of a phenomenal little silly story of set in a future where nobody can be discriminated against when they go for a job interview for anything at all. You know, it's kind of political correctness gone to the nth degree. So, you know, you can't be, you know, race or gender or age or anything like that, or competence as this new kind of level of thing. So you have people who decide they want to be train drivers because they used to be nail technicians and they quite like trains. So they go for a job interview and they get the job and they become a train driver and have no idea what the hell they're doing and go blasting through a station. And, you know, a person, like, there's at the very start of the book, he's investigating a murder, and he goes to this building, and, you know, there's an elevator that he's got to go to, and someone says it's, you know, up on like the 13th floor or something, and he opens the elevator up and there's like 35 buttons, and he knows that there's only like 15 floors on the building. You know, and it's like nobody's got the right job or the right training or anything. It's just the whole world is completely falling to pieces because nobody has competence anymore. And it's just loads of little wonderful nuggets of humor in there. It's, you know, it's proper Douglas Adams style, very dry British humor that, you know, it's that kind of similar vein. That would be really good as a movie.
What about you, Andy?
I've got 2 books in mind that I think would be good movies. Imagica by Clive Barker. It's kind of sort of both these are kind of sort of fantasy sort of worlds. And the other is Greg Bear's essentially it's 2 books, Songs of Earth and Power. They're both kind of, there's some great world building, some great character building, really good stories. I think they'd be cracking films. Both of them. They probably both need to be kind of 3-hour films. Not going to do justice in 90 minutes to the world that they both created. Yeah, definitely.
I'll have to look this up.
But I think sometimes books. I think sometimes books can never be made justice right by sort of films and things. I mean, one of my favorite books of all time, it's not fiction, is Touching the Void by Joe Simpson, which is a tale of 2 climbers going up a mountain in South America, having a bit of a bad time, and what happens following that. And the film was made, and, you know, Joe Simpson was heavily involved in the film. Simon Yates, who's the other climber, was involved as well. And it's just a bit flat. Yeah, there's some great scenery. There's some great bits of action. Yeah, there's an accident. The accident is filmed really well. These kind of your pulse rate goes up, bit of adrenaline, but the overall film is just flat compared to the book. The book is one of the few books I rarely read books twice. Some books I'll read twice, but never a third time. There are some books I've read dozens of times, like Hitchhikers, and Touching the Void. It's literally the copy I have, which I bought in 1988, is falling apart because I've read it so many times. And it's just complete. It just grabs your mind, and you know the story is developing from it. And I don't think actually it could be made into a film. I think it is something you have to read. You have to put your own imagination into it. And I don't think a film can ever do it justice because of the way you can't show thought. Because there's a lot of time where Joe Simpson particularly is in his own head, and you can't put that into a film, I don't think.
That sounds like it's definitely grabbing your attention.
What a segue!
So much better. So much better than Steve's.
I'm just temporarily aware.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So things that grab your attention. So Brett, what's been things that have been grabbing your attention? It can be anything. It can be many things. It can be any format. It can be something you're working on, something you've finished, something you're about to start, something you've read.
It's like a fancy spiff.
Yeah, but we don't limit it to sort of thinking about people or just not even supposed to do that anyway. But yeah, basically, what's been grabbing your attention lately?
What has been grabbing my attention is I'm now working on 2 of the biggest fossil projects that I've done to date, and then we'll probably just continue ramping up from here. But sculptural art made out of metal. I'm trying to eat and digest as much of it as I can possibly find, just to see how other people are going through the process of making these things, like what's fabricated, what's hammered, what's welded, how are people solving weight problems when you actually need something to not be 1,000 pounds because it has to get delivered somewhere, right? But you want it made out of steel. And so while I've been working on some of that, I'm also trying to find the aesthetic that I'm pushing for in these things. So yeah, I'm looking around at general back-end fabrication videos and sites, but there's this show that is now just like, it's hitting the chord that I'm feeling for these projects right now, and it's called Dark, and it's on Netflix, and it's German, and tone, vibe, aesthetic, something about it, it's been, for some reason, like the perfect thing to watch and listen to and check in on periodically when I've been in this mode of what do I want these pieces to look like. They're a little bit, I'm just going to say, like, as far as display pieces goes, I think they're going to have kind of a, not Geiger-esque, but they're just going to be a little bit more anatomical because of the pieces that I'm working for. One of them is a giant vertebrae and the other one is a tusk. But
Nice.
I want them to have an organic feel to them being made out of steel. And I'm getting into like this. Yeah, I was looking at Geiger things and then Dark happened and I'm in this like German dark kind of sci-fi thriller something or other thing. You have to watch the show if you're into it. But this show, never heard of it, had a friend suggest it to me, and now it's like taken over the tone that's in my brain right now. And it's fitting. It's very fitting for what's going on. So check out Dark. It's on Netflix. I know some people made decisions against Netflix.
I've seen bits of it. My wife sometimes watches because she's a linguist.
Yeah.
And so she will often watch things in French, German, or Swedish, which are 3 languages.
Yeah.
To practice, just to get the practice of listening to people.
I think what's been the most healthy about this is just when I talk about wanting new stuff, it doesn't have to be produced now. I'm saying I need something different, something I haven't seen. And because foreign almost always delivers on that because it's not made in the same culture that I am. Like, this was such a good suggestion from a friend of mine. And now I'm quite a few episodes in and just loving every minute of what spins it's taken. Because, of course, in my mind, I'm like, oh, it's going to be like this movie that I've seen. Nope. It's absolutely not going to be like that. Stop trying to think you know where it's going. Oh, and the title sequence. Anybody that does any animation or motion graphics, just watch the title sequence of that show. It's bonkers and it's fantastic. And it's just, you don't see stuff like that. So just to see some new stuff, something new.
Yeah.
Change your brain around a little bit. That's been it. Dark on Netflix.
A few of our mutual friends have recommended that to me as well.
Jamie, what about you? What's been grabbing your attention?
Recovery, mostly. I had finally ended up with COVID a couple of weeks ago. So it's just been kind of a bit of self care, a bit of getting back to reality and back to normal and back to good health and stuff. But then, as a sneaky peek for the video viewers, the project that I've been chipping away at, I've actually got articulating for a future plan project kind of thing. The wings have been putting together. So
that is very exciting.
Yeah, that should be pretty cool.
Oh,
It's getting there. It's getting there.
Baby steps. It's all about baby steps.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I've got until March for the kind of the deadline for it, so I've got time to gently coerce it into.
You got 2 or 3 months to procrastinate, and then a month to panic.
Yeah, absolutely. How about you, Andy?
Me, not a huge amount. It's been school holidays this last week, so it's kind of that meant a lot more sort of family time and things. We had a big sort out. I was kind of not solo on this. Cupboard up to my right, just hidden in the kind of corner of the line. You can just see a line just beyond the books. There is was our homeschool cupboard mostly. And we don't homeschool anymore because kids are all off to school or heading off to university next year. Also, kind of a bit of a craft cupboard, and that's then kind of now being sorted and tidied. So it's now mostly bookbinding stuff. Although there's also a set of drawers which people can't see to one side, which. So it's got paper, so I'm not sure where that's going to end up. So, yeah,
that's fair. I think we might have just finally lost Brett's battery.
Yes, yes,
he's vanished.
Oh, he's back in. Yeah, back in.
Sorry, guys.
That's all right. That's all right. So yeah, tidying the cupboard. I visited some relatives today, and one of them's an amazing. They're both great artists, but one's just an amazing ceramicist, and their house is just full of their work and other people's work, and it's just, it was just like being in a ceramics museum, and we're talking we're talking art type ceramics as opposed to here's a mug, but it's just some of it was just phenomenal. So that was kind of really nice, relaxing afternoon. Had a nice lunch and just kind of chilling out with kind of arty type people. Just a nice way to spend a Sunday.
A nice little Sunday.
Yeah. So that was it. Cool. Brett, if people happen to not know where to find you, because I'd be very surprised. But if people are listening to this and they're
I have no idea who you are because we haven't done any sort of
because we don't do the introduction bit.
No, never.
Where can people find you if they really wanted to find you? Which I hope they would if they don't.
Stealing stuff from Malton Makes Workshop because he keeps posting toys that I want. But social media wise, you can find me on youtube.com/Brett Mcafee or pretty much anywhere if you just search Skull and Spade, as that is my brand, but YouTube wouldn't give me that. So Skull and Spade 13 on Instagram. Search the Googles for everything else.
Or almost weekly on the Fools with Tools podcast.
Fools with Tools. Yeah. Let's not talk ill of my boys. Make sure we give them the shout out. Yeah.
We wouldn't be here without them.
This is who coined it? I think it was on 2/3. But the Fools Extended Universe.
That was me.
That was you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Because I got the Fools with Tools sign. Philly Bob's from Dark Star.
Yes, you did.
So it's you guys get, as soon as we are offshoot from you guys, you're in shot every week.
Fantastic. Yeah, I always appreciate that, and it is really nice to know where we all started and met each other and how we've continued this all forward. It always reminds me of what a good decision it was for me to quit what the hell I was doing so I could meet amazing folks like you and still be chatting years and
It
years
is great,
later.
and it's such a great community. And I mean, yeah, that's the other thing. Kind of, several of us are working on is the FWT Tools Trinket Trade at the moment, which is kind of supplanting for this year, supplanting the kind of for Christmas instead of the treasure trade, which will be into the spring. It's just the FWT Tools we talked about on episode 40. It's created a community within a community, which
Makes me happy.
Yeah, just fantastic.
Plus, it's better than all the other.
Not that I'm teasing, but I've started working on my Trinket Trade.
Ooh.
Sneaky Pete.
I kind of know what I want to do, but I also know I'm a bit stuck with kind of because though it's not supposed to be personalized, I kind of want to personalize it.
I think we all want to.
And so I'm just a bit stuck because the personalization is just completely out of my wheelbase.
Well, it was the whole idea, wasn't it? Is we said let's take the pressure off everybody and not make it a big stressful thing, and then we've all gone. Thank you. We really needed that, but we're going to put some pressure back on.
Exactly.
You can't help it. We're all gluttons for punishment when it comes to making cool stuff.
We certainly are. And on that note,
Brett, it's been an absolute pleasure as always to hang out with you.
Thank you guys so much. Seriously, this was a brilliant way to spend the afternoon. Thank you again.
No problem at all. Oh,
our pleasure.
Yeah. So we'll see everyone next week. Audio will be out tomorrow, hopefully, and we'll see everyone else next week. Bye for now.
Bye.